Thank you for the introduction page. Going to be talking about smart working and the future of work. And what I'm going to be looking at is from the work that I've been doing now, which is a lot of writing and research, and partly seeing what's happening now, what organisations are doing, and also looking to the future. And do interrupt me at any point to get your responses. Most of my presentation is pictures, and so apart from the few opening ones, a few busy slides there. But to tell you a bit about myself first, I've been running flexibility since 1993. Started off from European R&D projects in smart and flexible work, well, really teleworking in those days. Teleworking for people with disabilities, teleworking in remote rural areas in the construction industry. And flexibility was a kind of dissemination vehicle, a magazine, which looked at business innovation and new ways of working. And everybody thought we were a bit mad at the time. But I think things will be catching up. But all the time there's new stuff going on, so we're always moving ahead. And this is what we do. We also run something called the Smart Work Network, which is a peer collaboration group for large organisations implementing smart and flexible working where they can share experience and so on. Also done quite a lot of research. Here are some examples. This is who's been paying for it. We do research through sponsorship. Things like looking at what's the kind of futures of homes, live, work, property, and work hubs. This is something we did for the Department for Communities and Local Government in 2010. The new generation of work hubs, sort of drop-in business spaces, largely used by people with home-based businesses. Another European project, smart economic growth. What are the implications of this for smart economic growth? And produced a handbook called the Smart Working Handbook. And you can download this from our website, as you can most of the other reports I've just shown you. It's kind of guidance on how to deliver smart working. And on the basis of this, we're now writing the guidance for central government civil service. They're customizing, well, I'm customizing a version of this with case studies from the civil service and to get the government working differently. Working from anywhere, introducing all the new technologies, changing the spaces. This is a management book, came out in January this year. Smart Flexibility is what I chose to call it to try and be a bit different. You know, all the different names for new ways of working. We have Smart Flexibility. But it's all about moving it from theory to practice. So looking at the principles and then how do you put this into practice. And it's from Gower Publishing, so it costs a fortune. But if you want to get one direct from me, you can get it for just £35, which is that's about half the price. I'll give you a discount. What is smart flexibility? Well, I think there's been a number of things going on in the workplace for the past 20, 30 years, really. The business transformation, all these things about getting lean and being more efficient, virtual teams, electronic service delivery. This is where organisations are going now. And then on the other side, we've got flexible working, which has tended to be pushed by HR, promoted by the government in the UK as a right to request flexible working. Often pushed by people involved in diversity. And somehow these haven't necessarily been meeting. You'd have sort of two different things going on in the same organisation. There's also, with the new technologies, the ability for people to work anywhere. I mean, people often focus on telework, home working and things. That's really just one part of the picture. And it's how all these link up that give the opportunities for organisations to work smarter. So really, it's this kind of area that I call smart flexibility. But it does depend on all these kinds of things changing as well to support it. So it has to be a kind of integrated program of change to make it happen. And this is just a kind of summary from the Smart Working Handbook of what I think is at the core of it. New forms of collaboration and all the kind of changes to the work environments and the culture change which Diane talked about. And I'll talk about a little bit at the end, but you've really done my work for me there. So, change place, where should we work? Here's a thought for today. Organised crime in America takes over 40 billion a year but spends very little on office supplies. Is it possible to have an organisation which makes a lot of money but doesn't have a lot in the way of resources? Yeah. I used to sell file faxes to the mafia. It was a very organised crime. Thank you, Milton Jones. but these days it's all shared Outlook calendars, ERP systems, so they don't need the file faxes anymore. But really, these are the two questions I want us to be thinking about in this session. What is a workplace in the 21st century? And what is a workplace for? Is it a place? Is it something you carry with you in your technology? I say I've got my mobile office here today. It's the thing I will behind me. Here's a range of activity spaces from a number of different organisations. I don't know if any of you recognise any of these, where they are. Kind of typical kind of work environments developing. Well, I had to put in one of BT because they've always been at the forefront of this, really, haven't they? This is one of their breakout spaces, and full of people having ad hoc meetings and things like that. This here is Islington Council, where they have desk sharing. They've got the proper laptop stands and everything, so it's all quite ergonomic. Clear desk policy, added additional screens there, VoIP phones on the desk. This is all the kind of typical kit, and it's what a lot of organisations are moving to at the moment, although I think at the same time people are moving towards it, it's the picture that's going to gradually disappear. This here is, we've got to talk quietly about this one, it's GCHQ. And it's one which I like to cite when I'm working with the public sector as well, because GCHQ does quite a lot of flexible working, including home working. And one of the biggest arguments you always hear that people raise, well, all our stuff is very sensitive, our data, confidential, security. Can it get any more secure than GCHQ? And when you're in that kind of, well, we've all seen 24, haven't we, and that kind of thing, of spooks. So we know how they're whisking information all around all the time anyway, because you need it for operational reasons. And the government is actually working on different levels of data security and trying to relate that to different forms of flexible working that people can do. These two are from Vodafone at Paddington. So this is a typical kind of desk setup, no pedestals, and they haven't even got phones on the desk, have they? Because unified communications is the other thing coming in. So you just need your smartphone, and all your other things can come through your computer. A meeting room. This is often quite challenging for organisations because the meeting is still the meeting. Flexible working is something exceptional. And so you might have one or two people who try to ring in and get marginalised in the meeting. But if you have meetings which are set up for people to join in from anywhere, give control of the screen to anyone from anywhere, have paperless meetings, so you just connect to the Wi-Fi and have your laptops there. It's the way things are going. But actually, even so, I'd say that Vodafone's headquarters, most of their meeting rooms don't have tables in them either. So different kinds of furniture where you can sit around and talk and do different kinds of things. This here is at Plantronics. They're one of the other sponsors of this future of work study that I'm doing at the moment. These acoustic sofas here, do they work, these acoustic sofas? What do you think? Yeah, I think they do. And so to sort of hold the conversation in, you get a couple of them facing each other. Reconfigurable. It's a little bit kind of hippy-dippy, some people think, because they've got these kind of beads curtain things you can pull around in different configurations on the ceiling to indicate the extent of your meeting, how private it is, and so on. This is one of your little focus rooms. You can only, and a very high-tech egg timer on the edge there. So you can only go in there for 1 hour, and you get kicked out after 1 hour. So people can't colonise it and claim it's their office. And they also have no doors for that same reason. People can't colonise it. But they do have other spaces like this where you can go in for confidential calls or little meetings. And then they've got the people who have more of a call centre environment, big screens to do all their stuff on. But basically people work wherever it's appropriate to get the task done, as they do it at quite a number of these other companies. This is one of the case studies from my book, Birmingham City Council, shrinking their office spaces. And this is the kind of impact. And you can see it's working well because this guy's very happy. He's he's actually the person that was behind a lot of it. So what do you say?
He's the one left.
He's the one left. Very good. I don't know if any of you have seen offices like this, have you? I've got some worse pictures than this actually, of sort of filing cabinets in the basement toilet, so you can multitask when you're down there, I think. Or just recycle the paper somehow. This is Hertfordshire County Council, though. They haven't got those kind of spaces. And now they've moved to work environment like this. So it's not very fancy. I think it could be a lot more beautiful, but it is also a lot more efficient, the typical kind of layout like we saw at Islington. They still have quite a lot of paper, but they've got these swinging round filing cabinets, so that saves on the kind of circulation space and so on. And these are the kind of savings. So again, there's got really driven by sort of property reduction and so on. Lots of touch points around across the county. We did this study in 2010 of Workhouse. This is one other sort of dimension of smart working, and I think that sometimes the self-employed people are treated as a totally different entity from people in corporations, whereas we're seeing a lot of the same kind of things going on for people who are self-employed. There's 4.1 million people work from home for most of the time in the UK. That's 13.6% of the workforce. 2/3 of them are run home-based businesses. They're self-employed people. In fact, there's probably more than that, because people who are directors of their own company and count as a salary don't come into those figures. And this is Regis business lounges and the meeting space. And the biggest growth sector within Regis is not the serviced offices. In fact, they're changing some of their space. It's to people needing as-needed space, touchdown space to come and work. And they're opening lots of new local centres on that basis. And a big chunk of that is people who run their own business rather than the corporate employee. And then you have other places like this that we highlighted in the report. This is in Somerset, reusing an agricultural building. This one is in Brighton, although I think from the name out there, it looks like it ought to be in Liverpool. It's the WX. And then here we have some other ones. There's the Google Hub, that's an e-office space. These two are Enterprise HQ. Different kinds of furniture we're getting in here, different kind of approaches to how space is used. This is the hub at King's Cross, giving the kind of sort of warehousey look. And this is one, the little chain of these up in Northumberland, which I think is it's all sort of based on, you rent a desk in there, you book a desk for a day kind of thing. And Cubic, I don't really like it very much. But it is all these different kinds of experiments going on in how flexible space can be used. And this one is actually a redundant vicarage. So the church is reusing this as a kind of sort of place to help build social businesses. Live work, new phenomenon. There's various kinds of planning restrictions on actually running a substantial business from home. And so one new phenomenon is having live workspace. That is space which actually has dual planning permission for operating as residential and as commercial. It's quite a complicated field, and lots of councils are puzzled by it because they want to pigeonhole things in one area or another. These ones here are from a place called Bristol Paintworks, and it's a creative cluster in the regenerated brownfield site, and there's lots of live-work units, so people who live there and have a business which can be on the lower floor. This guy is just working from home, so that's kind of typical, working from home situations, not particularly within live work. And this guy here is this is from a development in London. I just can't remember which one it is at the moment. But again, you can see the nice stairs up to his living quarters above. And then we get a bit wacky and look to the future at the way things are going. These are screenshots from a film produced by Siemens for their sort of future cities. Have anyone been out to the Crystal down near the Excel Centre? They've got a big exhibition there of sustainable city futures. And they see working from home as being a key part of this. And so we're going to get all these wacky buildings with lots of things growing over them. Eatable buildings, I like that idea as well. You can grow your own food on your buildings. In the home, we have all these technology you can just wave your hand at and be natural to work from home. But I would just like to flick back to here. And actually, it's not necessarily all high-tech stuff that people are doing when they run a home-based business. A very large number of them are doing lots of very physical stuff. And I think that's often forgotten. It's all assumed it's going to be very high-tech. But adding the high-tech, the broadband and everything else to a traditional business really does empower the people. So to kind of sum up, this is all the different kinds of places where people can work, a bit like your list, Richard. And I've tried to divide them up into 4 areas here. And so you've got the company spaces, which can be the main office or local office or a distant company office. And there's different kinds of activity-based spaces within that. I've got another version of the diagram which extends it into kind of retail and factories and things like this, but I thought I'd try and just keep it simple with office spaces here. But then you've got all these other places where people can work. So what is the office? Where is the office? Well, let's move on to technology. Changing technologies. What shall we work with? You probably all know this quote from William Gibson. Yeah. The past, the present, and the future walked into the bar. It was tense. And in some ways, that's the kind of situation that we're in at the moment, I think, with the evolving office. We've got lots of legacy, we're here and now, but also looking to the future. Does that work as a link? I'm not sure. Here we've got the, the technologies, the evolution of man. Probably sometime round about the Bronze Age, we sort of reached a peak of manly perfection, no doubt womanly perfection as well, and then we're gradually weighed down by industry, and even the information age is weighing us down. This is a version from, I think it's got some, was it Apple did this? Anyway, one of the people who's making mobile device. This guy at the end, he's been liberated from that. He's dancing free. He's got his mobile device. Well, we have lots of fun with these, actually. But maybe this is the way it's going, really. But while we've been going that way, the devices have been going the other way, haven't they? Getting smaller and smaller and more portable. So these are all the kind of devices that we're getting, and how do you choose what to have? Take the top ones there, the mobile devices, laptops, tablets, smartphones. Who decides what you have? Do you choose your own? Do you bring your own? Or is it chosen for you? And I think often we see a trend in companies is that the people with senior status start to get the great stuff first. They're getting really lightweight laptops, and they got the Blackberries first. Now they're getting the new smartphones first. But really, it should be related to the kind of business that you're doing. So the people who really need it have to sort of queue up for a shared one or something like this. And then these are all the things which are coming along, which make a difference to enable people to work anywhere. What I find in organisations is quite often the early stages that people use conferencing technologies with outside organisations, partners and so on, and don't use it internally, because internally there's just a cultural habit of you always get together. So it's kind of like a second stage where people get into the conferencing. And then you get the other stuff in the technologies. Has anyone got desktop computers left in your office? No? They're going on the way out. But some people are still refreshing them. I know this for a fact. And some people insist, I can only run my software on this thing. You know, but actually, it's not the case. Telepresence suites, I'm sure we've all got those, haven't we, for a nice immersive office experience. And then the technology infrastructure. The ideal is to have seamless connection to all your systems to work anywhere. Have your phone reach you wherever you are, so you don't have to ring separate numbers, just one number to get you, and so on. So all this is coming along. And now we sort of go a bit into the future. This is a screenshot from one of these Intel future technology videos you may have seen on YouTube. If you just do Intel future technology or future home, future office, you'll find a whole lot of videos that do this kind of thing. So there's a whole sort of storyline here of people, I think they're in an architect's practice, they're designing a home for somebody in Malaysia or something like that. And then they're sort of doing stuff on the train on these little kind of tablets, and then they're whisking it off to the wall, and everybody can see it. This is somebody who's not behind the wall, she's somewhere else completely, and a completely paperless meeting, totally flexible with the technology. We're there almost, aren't we? This is one. This is a kind of mock-up, I think. Somebody marketing wanted to show something future. But I think, these are the kind of things that we're looking at. One thing that's definitely coming along is the death of the mouse. We're nearly there now, aren't we? We think of all the touch screen things. And maybe we've got this type of stuff coming along as well. What's this? Got robotics and 3D stuff, holographic things. I think everybody, this stuff will maybe in 10 years get to a kind of consumer level, and everybody will rush to have their Princess Leia screensaver bobbing around the desk, things like this, or the Daniel Craig one or whatever. But robotics, I think, is also going to make a difference, but maybe not the etiquette people like that. Different kinds of ways of delivering information on all kinds of paper, wearable technologies. There's a lot of future technology change coming along, as well as demographic change, which we've heard about already, and different generations in the workplace. I think the younger generation very much used to whatever new tech is coming along. Older generation wanting to scale back their work but not able to stop, but looking for greater flexibility. Aspirational change. People want different kinds of life and combination of things in life and changing careers. But I think what more lean is, I think, one of the themes that's driving a lot of this. We'll have just-in-time offices, just-in-time apps, just-in-time people. I think that with the growth in freelancing and with things like zero-hours contracts, these are two sides of the same coin. With more and more just-in-time people, short-term contracts, project teams that come together and disperse, which I typically work in. So mouseless, keyboardless office. Artificial intelligence, when that becomes really intelligent and it can give proper voice recognition, that's really when the keyboard will disappear for a lot of routine tasks that we do. At the moment it's not terribly intelligent, is it? Ambient computing, so you're kind of surrounded by computers. Just walk into the office, which could be in an office or at home, and says, "Hi Andy, what do you want to do today? Do you want to carry on with that document you were working on yesterday?" I say, "Yes, that'd be great." Shoop, up it comes. And this type of stuff is being introduced in retail, actually, isn't it? Already, people sort of recognizing things around, and the Google glasses and all kinds of stuff. It's really going to impact the office, the Internet of Things. Everything can talk to everything else. It's just people won't talk to each other. And then the deskless office. I think the way it's going, a lot of the projects I'm involved in is terribly vexed about an 8 to 10 desk ratio. Can we have 8 desks to 10 people? We'll die, or 7 to 10, or 5 to 10. But this fixation with the desk is, I think it may be irrelevant in a few years' time.
You wait till the ergonomics comes in with keypads, with the tablets, the ergonomics are terrible.
Yeah, absolutely.
If the desk goes, the ergonomics will be disastrous.
But you saw some of the designs that Richard had there of this kind of sort of all-in-one seat with a thing coming across. And when people get together in meeting rooms, they can balance it on the arm of a chair. I mean, for a lot of things that you do, probably the desk is just really for putting...
The major problem is actually that you're sitting down, isn't it?
Yes.
Actually, if you think about it, if you don't need to sit down, the ergonomics disappear, don't they?
Yeah, well, they certainly change, don't they?
Yeah.
And I think of people who've got headsets and things and they're talking to stuff. And we're going to have big screens around the place that we can wave at and talk to. I think walls and divisions in offices are going to start to come back in, but they'll be doing something, which may be screening noise, or it may be decoration, or it may be intelligent in some way. So I think a lot of the arguments about workplace design in the typical smart working implementation are really arguments from about 2008 at the latest. We're now 2013, going on 2017, 2020. What's the office going to be like with all this new technology and new possibilities? Surface technologies, screen technologies, just throw what you want across a intelligent surface and somebody else picks it up. What you said about the ergonomics, though, I think is really key. I think in the UK we terribly neglect it compared to, say, the Netherlands. And I think one of the difficulties is we're using so many devices as well, which we use outside of work. How can you tell whether a problem is coming from the use inside of work, which may be quite correct, or people using it on the train or at home, or so? And they haven't really evolved to the extent where they're a good ergonomic experience. You're quite right. This is the future past. Does anyone recognise this picture? It's from 1988, and it's an Office of the Future actually implemented in Digital Equipment Corporation in Helsinki. And this was the Office of the Future. So they've got the big monitors and things, and they've got big wires that you can pull down to plug them in and so on, but you can shift them around on trolleys. But actually, there's something about it which is, we still haven't got there, have we? If we put more modern technology in, some of the ideas for how the office could be might still be valid in a way, a bit more like home. And here's Future's Future. This is something from one of these Intel films. This is in a future office. She's doing her morning yoga thing conducted by her ambient computing surround. And then she's getting a call in from one of her friends, one of her colleagues actually. And then this is screens popping up everywhere. I'm also quite interested that the animals have turned to a chess set. I don't know how they did that. See on the last screen, got the animals there? Magic, isn't it? This is maybe she's in a different office or a different screen. But things projected and swung around. Is this too fanciful, or is it on its way? How does it affect how we should be designing offices? Think about work. Interesting, eh? How am I doing for time? Great. Culture change and the challenges. Here you can all have a go at me, actually. Why is it hard to change? Well, here's one take on it. The typical corporate hierarchy. There's a great book called Ignore Everybody by a guy called Hugh MacLeod. He's a cartoonist, basically, but he does lots of corporate cartoon work. And I think this is quite inspirational for getting, you can use it in workshops and things. And this is how different levels of organisation tend to view each other, isn't it, really? Or is it true? And so, how can you trust change to these people, for God's sake? When what they want to do is cut costs and turn you into mills, slaves at the mill. And how can you trust these people to go off and do their work? Well, in my book I propose something, and I use this in workshops as well, with senior managers and teams that are trying to change, what I call the CAN test. Challenge the assumption of necessity about everything. Why are we doing this stuff that we do at all? Why are we doing this here? Why are we doing it in this way? Why are we doing it now rather than at another time? And it's quite interesting. People can come up with all kinds of things. We'll do a little test in a minute of one type of example. But are there ways of doing this that are faster, more flexible, lighter, less heavy on time, energy, physical resources, more in line with customer needs? You can ask all these kind of questions to sort of say where we should be going. And as an example, let's go back to our meeting room and think about what is a meeting. Have any of you ever been to a pointless meeting? It's kind of a rhetorical question, isn't it? That's a bit of a commentary that it is. Anyone been to a boring meeting? Anyone been to a meeting which didn't reach a decision? Or a meeting where you drove to a pointless meeting, a boring meeting, you didn't make a decision? And all this waste that can be injected into what is just a normal process within the office, or we have a meeting. Organisation which have a default meeting time. You book a meeting for a certain amount of time, and it may be an hour. Your team meeting, well, you always have 2 hours on a Monday or Friday or whatever it is. Is that familiar at all? So you can start challenging that. Do we insist that everybody should be there at the meeting? And that the meeting should be in that place? So those people who are working from home, for example, or working at a client site and just tuning in for the meeting, they're on the periphery, and marginal smart working never works. So the dominant etiquette in the meeting is all about the people in the office. It's all inward looking, and the people on the edge are marginalised, ignored, and they feel like that. I normally sort of issue 2 challenges to people sort of looking at rethinking meetings. One is this one: never have a meeting to exchange information. Is that a fair thing to say? That's the stuff you can do beforehand without a meeting for the most part, isn't it? If you ever go to a meeting where you have information for the first time, it's usually on paper as well, you're just compromised in what you can do in that meeting. And then you can issue a targets challenge. Could you cut your meetings by 30% or 50%? How would you do that? And then people can really get talking, and they will start to identify all the fault lines in the way that they do that process, and how they could do things better, and how they could do it lighter by having less office space, by having people just coming in from anywhere, by using instant messaging to call that person in for just the 10 minutes that they're needed in that meeting, rather than being there for the whole duration. So there's often a whole lot of, these are all cultural things, aren't they? They're habits that have built up over probably generations, really, of this is the way we meet. If you start to deconstruct that and get people to actually challenge it, they take ownership of the way to go forward. Now, where should we actually work? When should we work? This is one kind of diagram to help managers make a decision. Basically, there's certain things which may be irreducible, like work has to be done at a specific time or at a specific place because that's just the kind of work that it is. Or it may have to be at a particular place, a flexible time, and so on. You can see the different kind of permutations that you have. But how do you decide where and when it should be? And I think one thing, it's not by tradition, and another thing, it's not by the manager's choice for what's convenient for the manager. It's taking into account all these business issues and as far as possible trying to dovetail it with the employee's aspirations as to where the work can be done. And then you start coming up with a different kind of dynamic, and it also really helps to push towards management by results as well, because the only way you can manage this kind of thing is by looking at the outputs rather than the inputs. So the other thing, is that place the office? That's another stage of questioning. Just because it's always been done there. These are our call centre. We have to get here, we have to manage them in this way. We have to get them all singing and dancing and clapping and whatever. We've seen the TV films, haven't we? But actually, the people can have call centre equipment in other places, at home, local office. There's a lot of that going on. Challenge all assumptions. And one of the biggest assumptions that is often made in people moving to smart and flexible working is people start with the old head on rather than the new head about what can be done, and they classify people by role. This is this kind of worker, therefore they must do this here, rather than slicing the role into the various tasks and thinking, where's the best place to do that particular task? Can we juggle the tasks differently, either with the same person or amongst a team of people, so that everyone can have more flexibility and we can serve the customers better and save money. And getting near the end here, penultimate slide, or I think, just about. This is my version of the change curve. Very typical kind of change curve, really, isn't it? I think there's a lot of following wind, as it were, for changing to smarter working. There's all these things, work-life balance drivers, environment drivers, business drivers, and you get a culture change program, you get the training in, and you should be able to move it forward. There is a certain amount of resistance to innovation, but in all the analyses that I've done, it tends to be, quite slight, the active resistance. The main resistance, it really comes from gravity, doesn't it, and inertia. And what you tend to find is that so much effort goes into getting the new technologies and the new work environments into place. These are the big projects, these are expensive projects, these need a lot of management, these are very visual. And you get them, and then you push the ball up the hill and it just rolls back and settles about here in what I call the platform of apparent virtue. It seems like a bit inspired by Pilgrim's Progress, I think, it's getting that kind of thing. We're rolling back into the slough of despond over here. But you need to push it over the hump of unfamiliarity, as I call it, which is nothing to do with Friday night or anything like that. It's actually, getting it over to that point where these things become familiar, and you need this culture change process and to push it all the way along and keep it going, and then there'll come a point when it's so familiar it's natural and becomes institutionalized. They need to challenge it again, I guess, as we get into the robots and stuff. In workshops that I've done, this is a kind of summary of what people think are the biggest challenges for making a difference, for actually embedding the new ways of working, actually changing the culture. I've had some good sessions where we get a bit kind of, sort of what is culture sort of thing, and people get quite deep about it, and you can get all the kind of sliding scales in the kind of HR terminology, and it's all about analysing different kinds of culture. But actually, I think for culture change, if you tie things to particular practical tasks, like changing meetings, or driving out paper, or having a clear desk, then these are the things that really change the culture, where people can identify a purpose with a practical action. So these are all the things, and people really struggle over this, maintaining team identity and so on, and how can we keep in contact? Well, there's all kinds of training, and you have sort of protocols you can draw up, get team charters people draw up together. So you work on all those kind of things to make it happen. And finally, you probably can't read all that because it's going to be too small from where you are, but it's at the back of the book. It's what I call the maturity model. And I think the typical kind of stages is we've got isolated initiatives, which don't really qualify as smart at all, but things like work-life balance things, or moving to non-territorial working, ad hoc home working. A stage of basic flexibility where a lot of organisations are at, which is basically a kind of reactive approach to flexible working. If you request it, we're nice people, we'll grant it. If it's not too much of a problem, if it doesn't cost anything. And I think that can be very negative towards introducing smart working properly, because it can create situations which people find difficult to work. They feel it's unfair in some way. But you have a strategic approach and pull together all the policies and technology changes and everything like this. This is a stage where I think a lot of organisations are at, the kind of emerging smart working, but it's not entirely integrated. It's not necessarily strategic. It may come from an initiative from the property people rather than really taking the culture change. But once you get all this stuff, the paperless office and all the kind of things you saw on the first slide, integrated, you can get to a smart flexibility situation where it's flexibility as normal. In the work I'm doing for the Cabinet Office, for the civil service reforms, they're talking about flexibility first, that you assume things can be, I think it's the same in the Telework Enhancement Act in America as well. There's an assumption that people can be flexible unless there's a reason not to be. And that's, I think, the new starting point, because work can be done in so many different places and so many different ways. So have we come to an answer? What is a workplace for? Or are we just confused now? It's too many different things.